So now that it has officially been confirmed that Fleetwood Town will be playing Sky Bet League 2 football next campaign, in today's video I'm going to be building and rebuilding their squad and how they could potentially line up for next season. If you do go on to enjoy, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 100 likes on today's video, that'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We're now on the road to 9,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already, with that post notification bell on. It's free to do so and it does massively help out. Get your thoughts in as well down in the comment section down below. Let me know down below, Fleetwood fans, what are your expectations for next season? Obviously it's not been a season of success this year for the Cods. They've had a couple off the field issues as well, which are massive for, with all due respect, a team like Fleetwood who have massively relied on someone like Andy Pilley over the last couple of seasons. They've had an excellent couple of years in League 1. They have now dropped down into League 2 and I want you to let me know down below, where do you want to finish next season? What is the aims, the ambitions, the expectations and all that sort of stuff? But let's waste no further time. Make sure to drop a like on there for me, subscribe if you're new as well, and let's get into it. Starting out then with the manager, Charlie Adam, and is he the right man for the job at Fleetwood Town? Now it all depends on what you class as the job. It all depends really what the expectations are. Now from the outside looking in, I think Fleetwood just need a season of stability. Look for around mid-table. If they can finish top 12, I think that would be a really good season for Fleetwood, especially looking at their squad. Fleetwood obviously traditionally sign a lot of players from Ireland, and some of them do very well, some of them need a couple years out on loan, and they've got a very, very young squad. I think they need a lot of experience coming in this summer if they are just to be able to rebuild and kind of transform at their side. But if we have a look at Charlie Adams' managerial record so far, it's not awful. You know, in League 1, you know, we all know that this is his first job as a manager, as a full-time first team manager anyway, but in League 1 this season for Fleetwood, he managed 23 matches, he won 6, drew 7 and lost 10, picking up 25 points out of them 23 games, averaging just over 1 point per game, which is obviously nowhere near good enough. But for where Fleetwood were in the table, obviously they've had a number of different managers this season. It never really works out under Lee Johnson, and I feel like Charlie Adam might not necessarily get the rub of the green because obviously he has played for Blackpool a number of years ago now, but I think you've kind of got to put that into the past. He's manager of Fleetwood now and he wants to be a successful manager, and he would rather do that in his first job, because why would a manager want to do badly just because he played for one of your rivals many seasons ago? I don't really understand the Fleetwood fans complaining about that, but I think Charlie Adam deserves that opportunity to build for next season. He prefers playing a 3-4-3 formation, which in League 2 I think a back 3 certainly works a lot more than a back 4, especially if you're not a team like, for example, Lydon or a couple of seasons ago, who can just pass everyone off the park. You don't necessarily have the best players in the division. I do certainly think a back 3 or back 5 certainly works much better in this league. Trust me, as a Bradford City fan, I've got a lot of experience, unfortunately, of League 2 over the last couple of seasons. I think we're heading into our 6th or maybe even 7th season at this level now, which is absolutely criminal. But Charlie Adam, for me, I think certainly deserves that shot of next season. But I think if Fleetwood lose 5 out of their first 6, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see a change there. But I think Charlie Adam for me is a long-term project, and I think he does deserve the opportunity for next season. So if we have a look then at how the Fleetwood squad is currently lining up, or did line up for the remaining fixtures of the 23-24 campaign, as you can see there, lots of loans expiring. They have also put their return list out. Any information taken from today's video is either off of the Fleetwood Town website in terms of what they did with their return list, or transfer marks. That's mainly due to positions. I know Promise Cherry, for example, has played as a striker at times, but just as an example, this is what their natural positions are according to that website. Again, you've got the contracts in brackets there when they're set to expire with the football club. We already know they have released 2 players, they've triggered the option for 3 players, and they've got 6 loan players expiring as well. And that's who we're going to talk about first, them 6 loan players, and whether I would personally look to try and get them back for next season. Starting out then with Mohamed Olubosun Lawal, or better known as Bosun Lawal. He has had a very good season this year for Fleetwood, and in my personal opinion, I would definitely be looking to get him back for next campaign. Now, he is traditionally a centre-half, but he's been playing quite a lot in midfield this season. He's got 6 goals and 2 assists, which I think is a very good return, and he scored from some pretty important goals for Fleetwood. Yes, in the end, it wasn't enough to keep them up, but for a season out on loan in League 1 at 20 years of age, for a team who've massively struggled for the large part this campaign. I think he has done very well. He's managed the 40 starts as well this season, so clearly very robust. Averages a goal every 591 minutes, which I think is a very solid return. Kept 9 clean sheets this season, 1.9 tackles per game, 5.4 balls recovered per game, and 2.9 clearances per game as well. He has unfortunately committed 1 penalty offence, but that comes with young players gaining experience. He wins 74% of his aerial duels, absolute monster in the air, and he also wins 54% of his ground duels. Obviously, it's very unlikely, but if Fleetwood can get him back for next season, it would be an absolutely outstanding piece of business. I certainly think he's been one of their better players this season. Elijah Campbell is a very interesting one. I think he joined on loan from Fleetwood, and he did only manage the 11 starts, 12 appearances in total for the club, but when he played, statistically, he didn't do too bad. Obviously, I'm basing a large part of my information off of stats, and I know they can be a little bit deceiving at times, but statistically, I thought Elijah Campbell didn't do too bad. He did only manage to keep the 2 clean sheets with the Cods, but when he played, averaged 1 interception per game, 2.4 balls recovered per game, and 4.3 clearances per game as well. He wins 62% of his aerial duels and 57% of his ground duels with a 75% successful dribble rate, and I think for a centre-half at 19 years of age, Fleetwood could certainly do a lot worse than signing someone like Elijah Campbell back for next season. I don't think he's a priority, but in my personal opinion, if he's available and fancies another loan move, he might get a little bit more football as well, dropping down into League 2. I certainly think Elijah Campbell would be a decent loan signing for next season. Left wing back Harry Boyes is up next then, and again, similar to Elijah Campbell, someone who I would be looking to have back for next season. I wouldn't be desperate to have him back, but I think you could again certainly do a lot worse. At 22 years of age, he did manage the 27 League 1 appearances this season for the Cods, 22 of them being starts. He got 2 assists as well from left wing back, and again defensively it looks pretty good. 2 tackles per game, 3.6 balls recovered per game, 1.2 clearances per game as well. He does only win 38% of his aerial duels, which I think is a little bit of a concern, but 28% of his crosses are accurate, which I think is very good. He created 4 big chances as well, averaging 1.1 key passes per game. Going forward, I think he's a threat at League 1 level, but if you're then dropping down into League 2, I think he could certainly be a very good signing for the Cods. Hasn't actually played though since towards the back end of February at Exeter away, so he must have picked up some sort of an injury, I can only assume. But when he did play for Fleetwood this season, I don't think he was too bad, and for me personally, I'd be looking to have him back for next season. Like I say, I'm not desperate for him to come back, but I certainly think the Cods could do a lot worse. Left wing back Amari Samuels came in January and only managed the 1 start for the football club, but just the 4 appearances for him in total, and in the end was a signing which massively flopped. When he played, didn't look particularly great, and you can understand why he did only manage the 1 start for the football club. So for me personally, I wouldn't be looking to have him back next campaign. Javier Simons spent the full season on loan from Hull City, and again struggled massively. Just the 5 starts for him this campaign in League 1, 12 appearances in total in the league, got 1 goal and no assists. Defensively looks really poor, just 0.6 interceptions per game, 0.3 tackles per game, and 0.7 clearances per game as well. He does have an 83% successful dribble rate, but it was a loan which massively didn't work out for Fleetwood. His only goal for the club came in a 1-0 win away at Lydon Orient in around the middle sort of time of April, and statistically had a really poor season. Yes, he's only 21 years of age, but I certainly think Fleetwood could do a lot better than someone like Javier Simons for next campaign, and for me personally, I won't look to be bringing him back. Gavin Kilkenny joined the club on loan from Bournemouth in January and had a pretty solid end to the season, to be fair. Played 16 matches in total in League 1, 15 of them being starts, 1 goal and 2 assists. Defensively looks pretty solid, 1.9 tackles per game, 5.4 balls recovered per game, and 1.2 clearances per game as well. He does only win at 19% of his aerial duels, which is a little bit of a concern, but on the whole for me, again, Fleetwood could certainly do a lot worse than signing someone like Gavin Kilkenny. He was pretty decent in League 1, so then making that step down into League 2. We've got to remember, Fleetwood are not one of the biggest clubs in the division. Andy Pilley might have spent a lot of money over the last couple of seasons on signing some of the better players, but Fleetwood, I think this season, are going to need to go a little bit cheaper. And whether it's a loan deal or back on a permanent basis, again, I think Fleetwood could certainly do a lot worse than Gavin Kilkenny. I don't think he's one that they massively need to re-sign at like a Boston Lowell, but Gavin Kilkenny for me had a pretty solid second half of the campaign, and I think to have that continuity going into next season, I think he would be a pretty solid midfield option. So let's move on then to the 2 players Fleetwood have decided to release from their contracts, and they have not been offered new deals going into next season. Starting out firstly with Sean Rooney, the 27-year-old played 29 matches this season in League 1, 20 of them being starts, scored 1 goal and got 2 assists, but defensively did struggle a little bit, only managed to keep the 5 clean sheets all season, only 0.8 interceptions per game. He was dribbled past on 1.1 occasions per game as well. He does win wins 61% of his aerial duels, but only 47% of his ground duels. I think Shaun Rooney, for me, is a solid enough right back at League 2 level, and he could have done a job for the Cods, but I have a feeling for some reason that he's going to be one of their higher earners at the club, and I just feel like that money could be better spent elsewhere. In my opinion, they've got a couple other options who can play in that position as well, like Kyle Johnston, who for me personally is better than Shaun Rooney. Ryan Broom in the past has proven he can be very good in that position, but his time so far at Fleetwood hasn't really worked out. I can understand why they've released Shaun Rooney. I don't think he was one that I'd be desperate to have back for next campaign, but I can certainly understand why they did. Obviously, in the previous season, he got 6 goals and 4 assists. His attacking output hasn't been there this campaign, and I can certainly see why Fleetwood have decided to release him. Ben Hennigan was a very surprising one, to be honest with you, because he is now 30 years of age, and I know he struggled with injuries at Sheffield Wednesday, but he played a large part under Charlie Adam, and he managed the 37 starts as well this season in League One. Didn't get a goal contribution, but defensively very solid. Kept 7 clean sheets, 1 interception per game, 2.5 balls recovered per game, and 5.7 clearances per game as well. He did commit 2 penalty offences, but he wins 40% of his ground duels and 69% of his aerial duels. Fleetwood fans, let me know down below, why do you think Ben Hennigan has been released? Because for me personally, it looks like he's had a very solid season with Fleetwood, and I think he'd be more than competent at League 2 level, but Charlie Adam clearly sees otherwise, and Ben Hennigan has been released by the Cods. As we know already, 3 players have had their options triggered in their contract for a further season, that being Barry Bagley, Melise Asamoah, apologies if I have pronounced that wrong, and also Kian Hayes, but we're going to speak about all of these 3 later on in the video, so we'll skip past that section and move on to the players who are currently contracted for next season, but I would personally move on from the football club. Starting out then with Stephen McMullen. Now, the reason why there's an asterisk next to his name is because I would send him out on loan. He is only 19 years of age, and he's probably going to be 3rd choice goalkeeper for next season. I don't personally think you need 3 goalkeepers around the place, especially a young player with the potential like what Stephen McMullen has, and I'd be looking to get him out on loan to the National League and try and get him a full season under his belt. He did manage 2 appearances in League 1 this season, starting 1 of them matches, but on the whole has been the bench goalkeeper for the majority of this season. I think for all parties really it makes sense for him to go out, get some regular football, and also start developing as a young footballer. After that, we move on to Harrison Holgate, who I would be personally looking to sell this summer. He is contracted with the football club until 2025. Again, at just 23 years of age, I think there could be a player in Harrison Holgate, but I just think there could be better, that money that they're paying Harrison Holgate could be better spent elsewhere. He only managed the 6 starts in League 1 this season and hasn't played it since the start of March. When he did play, massively struggled as well. They failed to keep a clean sheet when he played. Only 0.5 interceptions and 0.3 tackles per game. Simply not good enough, and he only wins 44% of his ground duels. I think there's much better players out there than Harrison Holgate. He's picked up a red card as well this season in his last outing for the football club. He's been on the bench for the large part as an unused sub, and I just think there's better players out there than Harrison Holgate, so for me personally, I will be looking to sell this summer. After that then, we move on to Ryan Broom. Very versatile, can play right wing back, right midfield, central midfield, even as a number 10, but Ryan Broom for a number of seasons now has not had the end product that was desired from him when he was in his prime really at Cheltenham Town, and that was a long time ago. He is now 27 years of age, so he's coming into his prime, and he did manage the 36 appearances in League 1 this season. 27 of them have been starts, but 2 goals and 2 assists simply isn't a good enough output. Defensively, didn't really contribute much, just 0.4 interceptions per game, 0.7 clearances per game as well. He wins less than 45% of his ground and aerial duels, and Ryan Broom I would expect is one of their higher earners at the football club, and going down into League 2, it might do Ryan Broom the best playing League 2 football and trying to get his confidence back, but he's not currently playing with confidence, and he's not currently providing output, and again, Fleetwood need a bit of output going forward at next season, and I don't see Ryan Broom as part of those plans, so I would look to move him on this summer. Danny Mayer signed for the football club with a lot of expectation on his shoulders and massively failed to deliver this season. He is also contracted with the football club until 2025, and I would personally look to move him on this summer. He is now 33 years of age as well, and only managed to 24 starts in the league this season, 33 appearances in all competitions, no goals, 4 assists isn't too bad, but we just need a little bit more. Again, similar to Ryan Broom, I expect Danny Mayer to be one of the higher paid players at the football club, and defensively offers absolutely nothing. 0.2 interceptions per game, 0.7 tackles per game, and 0.7 clearances per game. Wins again less than 50% of his ground duels and less than 45% of his aerial duels. He's not contributing defensively, which you don't mind if he's then getting goals and assists, but 4 assists in 33 33 League One appearances this season and also no goals is simply not good enough. And for the wages Danny Mayer is probably on, I think it makes sense really for all parties to either terminate his contract or look to try and get a transfer fee for him and hope someone pays it. Barry Bagley and Malaise Asamoah are two players who've had their contracts extended by a further season with the football club, and they are currently out on loan at Waterford until November, so I would keep them out on loan. The young players, again from Ireland, who need to be playing regular first team football. Another player who I would be looking to send out on loan though is Tom Lonergan. This season in League One for Fleetwood managed the 9 appearances in total, 4 of them being starts. Again, played quite a lot under Charlie Adam. In his last 2 games he got a goal and an assist. In total, he got 1 goal and 1 assist for the football club. Averaged a goal every 381 minutes, which is not too bad of a return. I could certainly see him staying around as a 4th, maybe 5th choice striker, but I think again, a young player who's contracted with the football club until 2026, he needs to be going out and playing regular first team football. And I think with some of the experience Fleetwood might bring in this summer, his opportunities are then going to be limited. And would you rather a young player be available every now and again to get an odd opportunity off the bench, or be playing regular first team football in the National League or back in Ireland? For me personally, I think it makes sense really for all parties to let him go out on loan. Ronan Coughlin has been massively disappointing this year for Fleetwood, and at 28 years of age now, contracted until the end of next season, I would personally be looking to sell him this summer and hope that somebody is willing to buy him. He is now in his prime and he's only managed the 9 starts for the football club this season, has struggled with a couple injuries, didn't play between the 2nd of March and the 20th of April, and that's not the only injury that he has had this season. Scored 2 goals and got 1 assist, averaging a goal every 371 minutes. But I just think Fleetwood need better than Ronan Coughlin. If he stays around as a 4th choice striker, as long as his wages are not astronomically high, I don't think it is the end of the world. But looking at the amount of games he's played this season, and then also his output as well, I think it makes sense really for all parties to allow him to move on this summer, try and get a transfer fee in for him. If not, then you just get his wages off the wage bill and you can get somebody better in than Ronan Coughlin, because I think for me personally, he might do an okay job in League 2, but his injury record is a concern and his output is also a little bit of a concern as well. Just 3 goal contributions in 13 League 1 appearances this season. It's not particularly good enough, so I would personally sell him this summer. Now, the final departure that I want to see this summer is Theo Williams, who I would let go out on loan. He's contracted with the football club until 2025, made 1 League 1 appearance this season for Fleetwood, and that was at the back end of August. And the only other appearance he's played this season was for Torquay away at Havant and Waterlooville in the National League South on the 11th of November. That's the only 2 games he's played all season, according to SofaScore, which I think is baffling. But Williams did actually score in that match. I'm going to assume he's massively struggled with injuries this season, but again, he needs to go out on loan, get some regular first team football, and it just makes sense really for all parties. So that concludes all of my outgoings, and also factoring in the contracts that Fleetwood would have for next season, bringing back some of the potential loanees as well. If all that transfer business was to happen, here then is how the Fleetwood squad would line up. As you can see, there's a lot of room for improvement, and some of them loanees like Harry Boyes, Elijah Campbell and Gavin Kilkenny are not even dead certs that I would massively have back for next season. But if Fleetwood were going into the summer with 8 players, which they could genuinely well do if they do my type of transfer business, then I think that is a massive concern. But some of their higher earners who are a bit more experienced, who haven't really provided for Fleetwood last season, need to be better. And from how I look at the squad now, I think if it was to look like this going into the summer, I think it's much more balanced. You've got a lot of budget then to spend on better free agents, because there is a lot of good free agents available. Obviously, just to confirm, the players who I would be sending out on loan will be Stephen McMullen, Barry Bagley, Malaise Asamoah, Tommy Lonergan and Theo Williams. And the 4 players who I will be looking to sell are Harrison Holgate, Ryan Broom, Danny Mayer and Ronan Coughlin. Now let's get into the fun part of the video. We have some potential transfer targets Fleetwood could sign this summer. I think there's around 30, maybe 33 in total. They need a lot of signings, and they need a lot of room for improvement in a lot of different positions. Let's get into it. Now, I have no idea what Fleetwood's budget is going to be going into this summer, but if you factor in that Andy Pilley, or when Fleetwood basically put a statement out when Andy Pilley got sent to prison, they said that the club will continue running in the same way that it already had been. Now, I look at that and also some of the other players who I want to leave the club. I think Fleetwood will have a little bit of budget, but if not, I have a cheap option, a sort of middle ground option, and maybe a little bit more of an expensive option. Now, the positions I think Fleetwood need to improve in if they are to play a 3-4-3, 3-5-2 formation. I've gone with a right centre-back, a centre-back, a left centre-back, a right wing-back, a left wing-back, a DM, a centre-mid, an attacking midfielder, a right striker, and a left striker. And even some of these positions, I think they need more than one player to sign in as well, which is absolutely mental. Starting out then with my 3 right-sided centre-half suggestions. Firstly, we have Luke Hendry, who's been released by Bradford City. Then we have Declan Drysdale, who is in a similar situation and has been released by Newport County. And finally, Corey Whelan, who has been released by Carlisle. We'll start then with Luke Hendry. Obviously, I'm a Bradford fan, and he spent the season just gone by out on loan with National League side Hartlepool, and by all accounts, did pretty well down there. Did struggle with a couple injuries, but I think from what I saw of him in pre-season for Bradford City, can certainly play right centre-back, and I won't say I'm disappointed to see him being released, but I think he'll be one of the cheaper signings that Fleetwood could certainly make, and I think they need to improve defensively. Luke Hendry is very solid defensively at League 2 level. He is a mid-table League 2 player in my opinion. I was surprised to see him drop down to Hartlepool in the National League, but Luke Hendry defensively is pretty solid at this level, so I think would be a good signing. Declan Drysdale has been released by Newport, and whenever I've watched Drysdale, I'm not going to lie to you, I think he's been awful. I think he's been bullied by Andy Cook, but statistically didn't have too bad of a season with Newport, and again available on a free transfer, so could be a decent option at right centre-back. And finally, Corey Whelan at Carlisle United couldn't even get into their registration squad post-January and was deregistered and hasn't kicked a ball pretty much all season, but in the previous season in League 2, I don't think Corey Whelan was too bad. He's at a good age as well. I think a fresh start at a club like Fleetwood would do Corey Whelan the best of work, and I think for both parties could be a good pickup. Again, probably one of the cheaper options as well, with him not playing much football, and he'll be desperate just to try and get back playing again. I could see Whelan dropping down into the National League, but I think he would be a good signing for Fleetwood. Moving on then to my central centre-half suggestions. Firstly, we have Ben Tozer, who has been released by Wrexham AFC. Then we have John Joe O'Toole, who's been released by Mansfield Town. And finally, George Ray, who has been released by Barrow. Now, obviously, these 3 are players you probably consider a little bit more expensive than the other 3 centre-halves I have already suggested in today's video. But Ben Tozer is someone who's been quite criticised by a number of different clubs' fans when it was announced that he has been released by Wrexham, and I think when you look at some of the centre-halves that have been released by Wrexham, the likes of Aaron Hayden and Jordan Tunnicliffe are obviously much better players than Tozer, so I think Fleetwood could maybe go under the radar, get some vital experience into that defence as well, which I think they need for next season. John Joe O'Toole, again, in a very similar situation to Ben Tozer, was never going to be good enough to make that step up into League 1 with Mansfield. With all due respect, they've moved on from players like John Joe O'Toole, but he was massive for them a couple of seasons ago. Has a lot of League 2 experience, struggled really for minutes at AFC Wimbledon out on loan in the second half of the campaign, but I think on a free transfer, quite versatile, would be a decent pickup. And finally, George Ray at Barrow, again in a similar neck of the woods, very north of England, and I think on a free transfer would be a brilliant signing for Fleetwood. I think any club that ends up with George Ray have got themselves a very, very good player for the level, and I was surprised to see him be released by Barrow, to be honest with you, and I think would be an absolutely outstanding pickup on a free transfer for the Cods. Moving over then to my left centre-back suggestions. Firstly, we have Joe Jacobson, who has been released by Wycombe Wanderers. Kian Harries, who is out of contract with Aldershot, but he has been offered a new deal by the football club. And finally, Tyler Blackett, who has been released by Rotherham United. Starting out with Joe Jacobson then, obviously he's a natural left back in a back 4, but I think could certainly play left side in a back 3. 37, 38 years of age, so has a lot of experience in League 1 with Wycombe over the last couple of seasons, but on a 1-year deal, again, I think Fleetwood could certainly do a lot worse. If Brendan Weirdo ends up staying with the football club, which might be unlikely, but that would be massive news for them, I think Joe Jacobson would be the perfect backup for him, and it would then maybe allow Weirdo to move back into midfield. Kian Harries has scored a lot of goals with Aldershot this season from centre-half. I think he scored around 8 goals, something like that, which is obviously a very good return, and I think at the moment available on a free transfer. I don't really see him signing a new contract with Aldershot. I do now see him making that step up into League 2, and I think Fleetwood would be a very good fit for him. And finally, Tyler Blackett at Rotherham. I'm not too sure if this is the right type of signing that Fleetwood need, where they're signing a released player from a championship club who have just been relegated and were well beaten throughout the majority of the season, but a left centre-back who might be looking to restart his career. A lot of experience in there. He might be a little bit more expensive as well, but I think on a free transfer would be a solid pickup for the Cods. Let's move over then to my right wing-back suggestions, starting out firstly with Callum Johnson, who has been released by Mansfield Town. Tyrell Warren has been released by Barrow. and he's in a similar situation. And finally, Todd Kane, who has been released by Stockport County. Starting out firstly then with Callum Johnson, I think for me personally, he's the best out of the three. Has struggled massively with injuries over the last couple of seasons, but when he's been fit and available, I think he's League One standard, and I think Fleetwood could certainly get the best out of him, and he will provide some real competition for some of the other right wing backs they've already got at the football club. Tyrell Warren has really struggled for game time at Barrow over the last couple of seasons and has kind of taken a little bit of a dip, but moving to Fleetwood, I think maybe starting out as a backup and then progressively making his way into the first team, I think could be a good move for him. And Todd Kane as well, being released by Stockport and just kind of signed a short-term contract with them to get them over the line, and was a very good signing. A lot of experience in there, maybe more of a right back in a back four rather than a right wing back. Could probably play right-sided centre half as well, but I think on a free transfer, any of them three would be good signings. But Callum Johnson, if you can keep him fit, is probably the pick of the bunch for me. Let's move over then into my left wing back suggestions. Starting out first here with Stephen McLaughlin, who is currently contracted with Mansfield until the end of this season, but has been offered a new deal by the football club. You then got Miles Hippolyte, who has been released by Stockport County, and finally Ben Williams, who has been released by Cheltenham Town. Starting out with Stephen McLaughlin then, you would expect him to stay with the Stags, but if you could offer him more regular first team football, I think on a free transfer would be a really smart pickup for Fleetwood and provide some real competition in at that position. Miles Hippolyte is probably the pick of the bunch for me. He is naturally a winger, but had played quite a lot at wing back under Dave Challoner at Stockport. Obviously he's got that promotion win on his CV, and I think if you can offer him maybe a longer term contract, you could certainly convince him to sign for Fleetwood. And finally Ben Williams at Cheltenham. Again, you're signing a player potentially from a club who have also been released. They're in a very similar situation, so you may be thinking, why would you want to sign him? But he's a young player still, and in my eyes he's still a really good player, and I think at League 2 level would be a smart signing on a free transfer. I think going forward he can improve, but I think he does have a decent output defensively. I think he is pretty strong as well, and on the whole for me, I think any of them three on free transfers would be good signings, but especially Miles Hippolyte. With the defence now complete, let's move on to some midfield suggestions, starting out firstly with the holding midfielders. Firstly we have Sam Foley, who has been released by Barrow AFC. Kevin McDonald is contracted with Bradford City until the summer of 2025, but it is highly expected that the Scot will be leaving the football club this summer. And finally Anthony Hartigan, who has been released by Mansfield Town. Starting out firstly with Sam Foley, I think the reason why Barrow have released him is because he's 37 years of age now, I want to say, but on a 1-year deal. We've seen Fleetwood sign these type of players before under Joey Barton. You think likes of Paul Coots, Glenn Whelan. I think on a free transfer will be a smart pickup for a season to really embed some of these younger players into the side. Kevin McDonald has struggled with injuries this season, but it is highly anticipated he will be leaving the football club this summer, whether that will be permanently or out on loan for the season. And I think he would really suit Charlie Adams' style of play. He's 6'4", but he doesn't really win much in the air, and like I say, it is expected he will be leaving Bradford City this summer. It'll be very cheap if there is any type of transfer fee, and I think would be a smart signing for the Cods. And finally Anthony Hartigan, who has been released by Mansfield, probably the pick of the bunch for me. Young player, swept up all the awards at Barnet's Player of the Season awards, and for me personally I think would be a really good signing. I would maybe expect him to go to a club challenging promotion in League 2, in all honesty. I was really surprised to see him not get a new deal with Mansfield. I think if they would have stayed down, he probably would have got a new contract and another opportunity at it, but I think on a free transfer Anthony Hartigan would be a really good signing. Sam Foley and Kevin McDonald would also then provide a lot of experience as well. 3 different options in there. Fleetwood fans, let me know down below, out of them 3, who would you like to see your club sign the most? Let's move on then to 3 central midfield suggestions. Starting out first here with John Bostock, who has been released by Notts County. George McEachran has also been released by Swindon Town, and finally Paul Lewis, who has been released by Tranmere Rovers. 3 players who have got a lot of League 1 experience. I think John Bostock as a ball-playing playmaker in that midfield would be a really good signing. He might not necessarily get 10-15 goals from midfield a season, but he's a very talented player if you can get the best out of him. George McEachran being released by Swindon I thought was a bit of a surprise, to be honest with you, because he has had a pretty solid season statistically wise, and I think as a goal scoring creative midfielder would be a decent signing. And finally Paul Lewis at Tranmere, again very good defensively, has offered quite a lot going forward as well over the last couple of seasons for Tranmere, and at 29 years of age he is now in his prime. I think a 1-year deal with maybe the option of a further year would be a smart pickup for the Cods, but any of them 3 really would be solid signings. You got to think about where Fleetwood are at this moment in time. They'll just, I wouldn't say they'll take anyone they can get, because you know, we need to put a bit of respect on Fleetwood's name, but a lot of players who've been released by League Two clubs would actually be smart signings for Fleetwood for this season, because the expectations are not too high, and when expectations are not high on a club, that's when we see a lot of them then kind of overperform. You look at Stevenage over the last couple of seasons, for example. Let's move on then to my attacking midfielder suggestions. Firstly, we have Gavan Holohan, who's been released by Grimsby Town, Clark Adore, who is contracted with Bradford City until the summer of 2026, and finally Callum Cook, who has been released by Hartlepool in the National League. Starting out firstly then with Gavan Holohan, he's a player I've suggested for a few clubs to sign this summer. I think Port Vale was one of them, and I don't really understand why Grimsby have released him, because over the last couple of seasons he scored goals from midfield, created chances, got assists, and I think for any League Two club really, he would be a really smart sign, and I think he's certainly capable of being in a team challenging for the playoffs next season. I think on a free transfer would be a really good signing for Fleetwood. Clark Adore, I think, needs a low move away from Bradford City, and with some of the signings I want us to get this summer, I don't really see Clark Adore in our plans for next season. He's a player with a lot of talent, and that's why I would only let him go out on loan from Bradford City, and I think Fleetwood on a loan would be a really good signing for all parties really. Let him go out and play some regular first team football, but he's got bags of ability, but he just doesn't really show it on a consistent enough basis. I think he finished the season with 3 goals and 3 assists, but for the amount of football that he got, that simply wasn't enough, and he's a very talented player, but he just needs to show it on a more consistent basis, and I think a loan to Fleetwood would make sense really. And finally Callum Cook, who's been released by Hartlepool, very inconsistent player, whether it's League Two or the National League, but I think has quality in there. It's just about unlocking it, and Charlie Adam could be that man, having played central midfield in his career, to get the best out of Callum Cook. And I think wherever Callum Cook goes, whether that be the National League or League Two, he will end the season with some pretty decent stats. I think he got 10 goal contributions in total with Hartlepool. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent with it. Let's move on then to my striker suggestions. Now, the way I've broken this down is the players who in the right striker category are more target men who could provide some real competition for Jayden Stockley. I think Fleetwood keeping all of Stockley is going to be massive for them next season, and the players who are in the left striker category are more finishers, poachers, runners in behind with a bit of pace, that sort of player. So starting out with the target men then, firstly we have Omar Bogle, who has been released by Newport County. Connor Wickham has been released by Charlton Athletic, and also John Marquis, who has been released by Bristol Rovers. Starting out then with Omar Bogle, I was surprised to see him be released by Newport, because he's always got around 10-15 goals at League Two level. I think even in the previous season he hit over 20, so he is a good player with proven quality. Obviously he has had a number of clubs in the EFL, but I think for on a free transfer to provide some competition with Jayden Stockley, it would be a smart pickup. Connor Wickham at Charlton obviously signed towards the back end of the season and was kind of just there to help out really for the remainder of the campaign. I think he did alright there, but his spell at Forest Green was quite impressive, and I think Fleetwood on a 2-year contract would be a really good signing. Imagine a front two of Stockley and Wickham. They are two absolute powerhouses at this level. And finally, John Marquis at Bristol Rovers. He needs to be playing consistent football to get the best out of Marquis, and I don't really see him staying in League One to get that. I think he will need to drop down into League Two, and I think on a free transfer, it wouldn't be the best signing in the world. He'd probably get around 10 goals at Fleetwood, but again, Marquis and Stockley up front, two players who would bounce off each other very well, and I think on a free transfer, any of them three really would be good signings. It really depends how Charlie Adam plans to adapt when Stockley is unavailable. And let's move on then to my other striker suggestions. These are more players who you would consider as finishers, poachers, players who run beyond and in behind. Starting out with the obvious one, Paddy Madden, who has been released by Stockport County. You then got Tyler Smith, who is contracted with Bradford City until the summer of 2026, and finally James Wilson at Port Vale. Three very different types of players, but three players who I think would bring a lot to Fleetwood Town. Starting out firstly then with Paddy Madden. He has been released by Stockport, and I think when that got announced, a lot of Fleetwood fans were very excited, kind of expecting him to join back to the football club, but it seems very likely now he will unfortunately be signing for Chesterfield, who have obviously just come up from the National League, and I feel like financially, location wise, and everything really considered in terms of club size, fan base, I think if, with all due respect to Fleetwood, if Chesterfield come calling, then you probably do go to Chesterfield, to be honest with you. It would obviously be romance if Paddy Madden was to rejoin the football club. I mean, even on a 3-year contract, Paddy Madden has proven he will score goals at this level, age regardless, because his game isn't based on pace, so I think his age, for the large part, is kind of irrelevant with the age he's currently at. You know, it's not like he's 50, so I think obviously would be a really good signing. Tyler Smith is very similar to Clark Adore, a player who has ability, hasn't proven it enough enough at Bradford City and probably needs a consistent loan move away from the club this summer. And you also got to factor in Bradford City probably want to sign another striker in this upcoming transfer window. And Tyler Smith always scores the hard chances. His catalogue of goals this season is very good, but he never scores the easy chances, and that is the problem with Smith. It might come down to a lack of game time. Did very well in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, won the EFL Trophy, Golden Boot, and I think for me personally, to go to Fleetwood to link up with someone like Jayden Stockley, he might like the physicality, but I think would be a really good signing for the Cods on loan for the remainder of the campaign. And finally, James Wilson, who was released by Port Vale. Port Vale fans were quite sad to see him go, really, and I know he has his injury problems, but when he's fit and available, he scores goals at League 1 level and especially at League 2 level, and I think on a free transfer would be a really, really good signing for Fleetwood if they can keep him fit. Obviously, Paddy Madden could be the priority. Tyler Smith on loan would then be my second option, and James Wilson would be my third option just because that injury record is a little bit concerning. But there we have it then. That is how I personally think Fleetwood should do their summer transfer business in this upcoming campaign. If you have enjoyed watching, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 100 likes. As I said at the start of today's video, that would be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We're on the road to 9,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed. If you haven't already, with that post notification bell on, it's free to do so, and it does massively help out. Get your thoughts in as well down in the comment section down below. Fleetwood fans, let me know down below what are their aims and expectations for next season, and how many of my potential transfer targets that I've suggested would you like to see your club sign. Let me know down below, what do you think the transfer budget will be as well next season. Will you be competing near the higher end? Will you be looking around mid-table, or do you think you're going to massively cut your budget and really struggle to sign some players next season? But thank you all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one. Peace.